1580 celebrates small businesses, the enduring lifeblood of our community, with the launch of the KBLA SMB Marketplace. For the first time, small to medium-sized businesses will have an opportunity to promote their goods and services on KBLA and take advantage of our powerful reach and local marketing power. The SMB Marketplace is hosted exclusively on KBLA1580.com and is accessible from all our social media channels. Whether you're a small mom and pop restaurant, a car dealership, or a professional practitioner, we invite you to join in this new KBLA Talk 1580 initiative to promote your business. As a Black-owned small business, you don't want to miss this unique opportunity to gain new customers on KBLA Talk 1580. For more information, contact us today at smb@kbla1580.com. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
And if I share with you my story, would you share your shadow with me? Time to get paid. Please.
Here it is, a groove slightly transformed. Just a bit of a break from the norm. Just a little something to break the monotony of all that hardcore dance that has gotten to be a little bit out of control. It's cool to dance, but what about a groove that soothes and moves romance? Give me a soft, subtle mix, and if it ain't broke, then don't try to fix it. And think of the summers of the past. Adjust the bass and let the alpine blast. Pop in my CD and let me run a rhyme and put your car on cruise and lay back, cause it's summertime.
It is indeed. For just a few more days, hard to believe that we are already approaching the end of the summer solstice, the summer season. But what an interesting summer it has been. Political conventions and politics and Olympics. What an amazing summer this has been in 2024. Almost out of the summer, but not quite. In this hour, our final hour today, two conversations as promised. On the B side of this hour, the President and CEO of Prosperity Now, Marissa Calderon, on racial and economic justice in housing and how we reimagine community investment. We will also preview the upcoming Prosperity Summit when Marissa Calderon joins us on the backside of this hour. We commence our final hour today, though, in conversation with the Boston Globe technology writer Hiawatha Bray. I like that name, Hiawatha. I knew a brother years ago named Hiawatha Harris. Used to love to call him by his whole name, Hiawatha Harris. Now I got a new friend, Hiawatha Bray. He is, again, the technology writer for the Boston Globe. And we'll talk in just a second about why electric vehicles, EVs, are such a hard sell to African Americans. What's that about? We will also preview the new iPhone that everybody's talking about. Hiawatha Bray, good to have you on. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Fantastic.
It's good to have you on the program. Thank you for your time. Let me just jump right in first on this EV conversation. We are in the let me frame this for you. We are in the midst of a 12-month climate justice campaign at my home station here in L.A. Of course, we're heard across the country in syndication. But here in L.A., we've been advancing a pretty aggressive climate justice campaign that has all sorts of tentacles to it. But it occurred to me that this is the urgency of now: climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. So we've been very, very much involved in this climate justice effort. And I mentioned earlier, today is the publication day for The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later. This book came out 20 years ago, went to #1. The 20th anniversary edition with new essays drops today. And in the book, one of those 10 covenants is a covenant about the digital divide and about economic, about justice when it comes to issues of the environment. So there's environmental justice in there, all kinds of issues that one will see in this particular text, which makes this conversation even more timely about why and how we find ourselves in this moment about in the environment and notions of environmental justice, where selling EVs to black people isn't so easy to do. Unpack that for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically it started when I ran across some data that came out from S&P Global, this global consulting and financial services operation, they look at the ethnic breakout of who's buying EVs. Mm-hmm. And I was rather fascinated to see that, for example, 31% in the second quarter of the year, 31% of all the EVs bought in the United States were bought by Asians, who only make up 6% of the population. Mm. And by the way, he said the great majority of those are Indians who are snapping up EVs at an incredible rate. But then you get at black people. Black people, we buy about 8% of all the new cars sold in America. Only 4.5% of the EVs being sold are being sold to black people. And that's an extraordinarily low level. And I started wondering, gee, what's up behind that? And it turns out you don't want to relate it specifically directly to race. You could say that it's sort of like the after effects or the echoes of historical patterns. Because what happens is that a lot of it has to do with two things. One, black people tend to have lower incomes. Mm-hmm. Two, black people are less likely to live in single-family homes, which is really important. 80% or so of the people in the United States who drive EVs live in single-family homes because it's easy, relatively, to plug in a charger and recharge your battery. If you live in an apartment or a condo, it's a real problem. And about well over 50% of black Americans live that way. And that one factor right there plays a large part in why black folks aren't buying EVs as fast.
Wow. I love the data. I love the data. I never knew this, and that's why I want to talk to Hiawatha. Didn't quite understand this, but it makes all the sense in the world.
Oh, yeah, it makes perfect sense. That plus also the lower income. Yeah, you put those two things together, and the statistic, it's perfectly obvious what's happening. It's funny, because I was reading the comments on my story, mm-hmm. the people who are commenting and saying, oh, you guys are just complaining about racism again. Racism. You're going to say that the car companies are racist or something. I wrote nothing of the kind. It's not about that. You could say that it's about years later, the after effects of things like discrimination in housing patterns and hiring, and the after effects of that causing lower incomes and different living patterns. But in any case, that's what's driving it. It's not like black folk. In fact, there have been surveys about, are black people interested in buying electric cars? And the answer is, yep. Black people are as interested in electric cars as any other segment of the population. But then they price it out. They look at the what it would involve in terms of their lifestyle to be able to own one. And they go, no, this really isn't very convenient for me because I live in an apartment and these things cost a lot of money.
When we come forward, I want to interrogate those two issues. I've got questions on both of those. The lower incomes, number one, and number two, the living patterns. All of this data that Hiawatha Bray is sharing with us now means that the industry, number one, and more broadly speaking, the country, the government, has a responsibility. If we really do care about our planet, if we care about the climate, and electric vehicles are the thing that we all need to be embracing more assiduously, then what role is the government going to play? What role is the industry going to play to address those issues of lower incomes and the living patterns issue that Hiawatha raises with regard specifically to African Americans? You heard him say earlier, 8% of the population, 8% of car buyers, rather, 4.5% of EV buyers. Those numbers are really, really rather small, as you heard Hiawatha say earlier. So we'll interrogate these two primary issues that underscore why more black folk don't purchase EVs. You're listening to Hiawatha Bray of the Boston Globe on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward. Tavis Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle.
Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
If it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide Free and Gentle. This back-to-school season, Tide and Downy are giving back with $1.5 million in scholarships. Enter to win. No purchase necessary. US/DC 17+. End September 30th. Rules. Tide.com/scholarships/official rules.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
Yep.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom?
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family. Together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do...
Let's play something, Grandma.
...became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust new Febreze car vent clips, now with 3 times greater scent control, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with new Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing, which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up Oscar!
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
Does indeed, in conversation with Hiawatha Bray, who's the technology columnist for the Boston Globe. Hiawatha, I want to make sure I get these numbers right. You mentioned an 8% number and a 4.5% number for black people. Give me those numbers again, what they were.
No, it's that black folks bought about 8% of the cars during that period.
Right.
But only about 4.5% of the EVs that were sold in that period, which was the first quarter.
Got it. I heard you correctly. I just want to make sure I got those numbers right. All right. Now let's interrogate those numbers now that I have them accurate in my head. Let's start with these 2 issues that you suggested earlier that underscore why more black people don't buy EVs. The first is lower incomes. The second is living patterns. Let me go with lower incomes first. I have read in myriad places over the years, but you're the expert here, not me, that there have been all kinds of rebates. I'm sitting in L.A., for example, and our Department of Water and Power has a rebate program, or it's either already online or about to come online. Somebody will, I'm sure, get me straight on this. But LA is not the only city doing this. But there are a number of articles I've read about people who are trying to incentivize fellow citizens across the board to buy EVs. So what's being done or not done, as it were, to incentivize black people with low incomes to buy EVs if we want to protect our planet?
Well, no, we already have all these programs.
Right.
The federal program with, what is it, like $7,500, and now that applies to used cars as well.
Right.
You've got state programs, and as you say, many utilities are offering incentives as well. A lot of these things are already out there, and they're not just aimed at black people or low-income people. They're aimed at everybody because of this desperate push to get us all to be buying EVs. By the way, just in passing, I should say that I have a certain skepticism about this whole idea, not because I'm skeptical about EVs, but because I think people are exaggerating the speed with which this transformation can happen. It's not going to happen overnight. You're still going to have people driving gasoline-powered cars for decades to come, and we're spending a huge amount of money to sort of force the market. And now, if you've been reading the news, you've seen this. Ford, just the other day, I think it was yesterday or Friday, said we're going to cancel this plan to bring out an all-new EV SUV, and we're going to make it hybrid instead, because consumers are saying we're not sure we want to go all EV yet, and consumers are starting to resist this. And this whole transition is going to take a lot longer than people think it is. So I wanted to say that in passing.
Sure.
But in any case, the other thing that the government can and is supposed to be doing is to deal with, you're talking about income. The other critical thing is the lack of chargers. The whole reason why people buy these things, the overwhelming majority of people who buy them have single-family homes because they know they can put in a charger and they know they're going to get their electricity. So if you want people who live in apartments to buy EVs, you've got to put a lot more public charging stations out there. The federal government set aside something like, what was it, $7 billion or something? At last report, they had built 8 chargers.
Yeah.
And this is like 2 years ago. It took the United States, it took the United States 3.5 years from a standing start to build the atomic bomb. And here we are. We know how to build electric. Really?
I'm laughing because, one, you're absolutely correct, but I'm laughing also because I was just talking in the last hour with a former military official, retired lieutenant colonel, rather well known around the country, Alexander Vindman. He spoke during
Alexander Vindman,
Trump impeachment hearings, and he was telling me we had a big fight last hour about he wants more military spending. I was like, no. So we were just talking about military spending and how long it takes us to build these weapons of mass destruction. But let me stay focused here. So that if we know that black people are not making enough money to afford these EVs, and if we know that they're pressing this issue on us to purchase these EVs, talk to me then about the pricing of these EVs, and whether over time that number comes down, because there ain't but one or two solutions here. Either the number comes down where Negroes can afford them, or somebody's going to help us with some bigger rebates to buy these cars.
Oh, my, are we allowed to say Negroes again?
Black people, Negroes, African Americans, I use it all. I use it all.
I love it. No, but seriously, no, the prices are coming down.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about this. EVs are getting cheaper. And in addition, this is very important, this year has seen the real birth of a meaningful used market in EVs. There are now enough older ones coming off lease or being traded in, so there are now significant numbers of used EVs. Mm-hmm. And with the tax benefits that have been brought out for used EV buyers, yes, going with used EVs is definitely becoming a more attractive option. In addition, you got to remember, under federal law, one of the key problems with the used EV is, I think, largely taken care of, and that's concern about the battery. The most vulnerable part of an EV is the battery, which gradually you lose. If you have a cell phone, you've seen this. Mm-hmm. Over time, it loses its ability to hold a charge. By federal law, these batteries have to be guaranteed for a minimum of 8 years. So if you got a 6-year-old EV, you still have a 2-year run left on your warranty that manufacturer has to stand behind that battery working. So, relatively late model EVs with batteries in them are a reasonably safe bet, and they're starting to hit the market now. And I've talked to people who are able to get a decent used EV for less than $20,000 by the time you figure out all the various tax credits. So, that is already happening. But even when that happens, you've got 50-some% of black people living in apartments. They aren't going to have charging probably where they live. You have to have more public chargers, and that's just taking forever.
So unpack for us then, what is it's government, so I can make a joke and just stop there as an answer to my question. What's taking so long? The answer, it's government, but not dump. But the question is, what is the backstory on why they're moving so slowly? And I hear this complaint all the time from folk who drive EVs, that there just aren't enough chargers publicly.
Well, there are all kinds of problems with this. Now we go back to like EV 101 here, okay?
Right.
The chargers that you find mostly are what are known as level 2 chargers. By their very nature, they run slowly. They're connected to the kind of electrical circuit that you would have if you have an electric dryer or an electric stove, 240 volts. That sounds like a lot of juice, but for recharging a battery, it's quite slow. You plug into one of those, you're going to be there for hours. That's going to take you a long time. Mm-hmm. To charge up a battery really fast, you need what are called DC fast chargers. You sometimes hear them called level 3 chargers. These things can charge up a car in like 20 or 30 minutes, which still seems like a long time compared to putting gas in the tank, but it's much, much quicker. But again, there's one huge problem. These things are incredibly expensive, and not just the charger. A charger might cost like $100,000, but the electrical grid has to be available to feed these chargers. I talked to a guy who told me that if you are charging up 4 EVs on a fast charger, those four chargers running flat out are using as much electricity as your typical Walmart store just to recharge 4 cars. Mm. And you're going to have to build thousands of these kinds of chargers all over the United States. It is not easy.
Mm. So I'm not telling you something you don't know. We Americans, and I've traveled around the world. I suspect you've done a little traveling yourself. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of things that make us uniquely different than many people around the globe. We are very, very, very impatient. We are a very impatient people. So I want to try this out on you for size, and if I'm wrong, feel free to disabuse me of this.
Okay.
My view is that whether black, white, red, brown, or yellow, Americans en masse are never going to embrace EVs unless and until no matter how much we're coerced, voluntarily, we're never going to embrace EVs if it's going to take me 2, 3, 4 times longer to charge my battery than to pump my gas. We are used to pumping gas in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
If as long as charging takes longer than that, I ain't trying to hear it.
No, I think you are at least partly correct,
Okay.
which is why I personally think this attempt to go total EV just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm one of those people who thinks that we should be doing something where it would be a combination of EVs and plug-in hybrids. It just makes more sense as a bridge technology. I tested the Ford Lightning pickup, the F-150 pickup, the one that's all battery. It was one of the most delightful vehicles I ever drive. It's just a fantastic vehicle. But if you have to spend half an hour, and this is a pickup truck, you're going to use this to do your work, you're like a construction worker or somebody, and you're going to have to stop in the middle of the day and plug it in for half an hour before you can make your next delivery of, 2x4s or something, it doesn't make sense. You need to have some way of knowing that that vehicle can run whenever you need it. And for many users, all-electric cars, I don't think still are going to make that much sense. I mean, I just got through our family. My daughter just graduated from Army National Guard training. We drove down to South Carolina, and we couldn't have done that in an electric car. Car full of people? Oh, no way. It would have been impossible.
Yep.
And a lot of people do that kind of thing. It's just not going to work very well.
Congrats on the graduation. That's good news. I love hearing stories like that. Let me come back now to the second issue. We talked about lower incomes and the impact that has on black people not buying EVs. Let me come now to the living patterns. This notion of single family homes. Americans mostly live in apartments more so than homes. That's nothing. That's no breaking news.
No,
there.
I don't. Overall, I think it's like
are homes more than apartments now?
Yeah, a little bit more. I think it's like about 60-some% in single family homes.
So the numbers have flipped on me over the. I've been at this for a long time. The numbers have flipped. I'm glad you corrected me. But even with that flippage, there is a significant number of fellow citizens who still live in apartments, obviously. And so what do we do about that? Even if we want to, if it's best for the environment, best for the planet, I get all of that. But if 40 or 45% of us live in apartments, what does that look like? You can't force apartment owners, can you, to put charging stations at their apartments?
Well, they're working on it. Oh, by the way, I just did a quick double check. As of the fourth quarter, 65.9% of households owned their homes. I don't know how that breaks out. It might be condos, so I'm not sure. Because if you live in a condo, you could still have the same problem with not having enough chargers.
Yep.
That's right. But in any case, more and more apartments are working on this. I know here in Massachusetts, there's a law that says new apartment complexes have to have at least the wiring for chargers at every parking space. They don't have to put the charger in. They at least have to have the wiring so somebody can put a charger in there. But they can't grandfather all that in. And it's not even, by the way, it's not even an easy sell if you do live in a single-family home. There are companies now that are trying to figure out ways, because there are many single-family homes where the electrical panel in the house doesn't have enough capacity for you to add a car charger. Right. You might have to spend several $1,000s additional for that, but at least you can do it. Whereas if you live in an apartment, there's often nothing you can do. Yeah. And no, there's limits to how much you can do about that, apart from putting chargers out in public places the way we do gas stations, but that has limitations of its own, as I just pointed out. And on top of all that, you have to remember that everyone agrees that we're going to have to beef up the electrical grids in individual neighborhoods. Sure. What will happen when everybody on the block is charging their cars?
Got it.
Our existing electrical grid was never designed for that. It's going to cost billions just to upgrade all the grid. And this has nothing to do with black people. This is not about black people. We're going to have to do that for the entire country. And nobody's ready for that yet.
More fundamental for me than the grid, and now I'm circling back to black people who have lower incomes. We know, and I am chagrined by this, I say it all the time, that black people in this country still lag far behind our white fellow citizens in every single leading economic indicator category. We still lag far behind, which takes me back to your point about your first point that we don't buy EVs because we have lower incomes. Help me understand, if you in fact did have a charging station at your home or at your apartment, your condo, your townhouse, and we could convince more black people to buy EVs, what does that do for your electric bill?
Well, it depends on what the electric rates are in your community. I mean, we here in it's a fascinating point. I'm glad you brought this up. Came out to the effect that in Massachusetts, you don't save nearly as much owning an electric car as you do in other states, because Massachusetts has like the third highest electric rates in America. So Yeah, that's a very good point. It will depend on where you live. And in a place like Massachusetts, you might end up saving only, I think one report, I think the new report says it's like about $1,000 a year versus having a gas car. But in other places, it could be substantially more. And also, of course, it depends on the fact that here in Massachusetts, while we have expensive electricity, the gas isn't too bad. We're paying about $3.20 a gallon, so it's not horrible.
Yeah. I got 2 minutes left. I'll give it to you. I didn't need much more time than that on this because everybody else is talking about it anyway. But just your thoughts on the new iPhone.
Oh, my thoughts on the new iPhone. I haven't seen it yet. It's going to be really interesting because they have added these new artificial intelligence features, and what really fascinates me is that their artificial intelligence features will include sending data from your phone to an Apple computer system in the cloud that's going to analyze it and give you the best answers. And that's a real difference. That's not something Apple usually does. When you give Apple phones sensitive information, they always say it's only going to stay on your phone and we're not going to let it off and go out into the cloud the way other companies do. This time they're going to, and they say they've invented a way to make it absolutely secure. Well, you know, Microsoft, do you remember a few months ago they said they came up with this new system called Copilot, and it turned out to be insanely insecure. Anybody who could sit in front of your computer and get all your sensitive information, and now they've held back on it, and they're being very reluctant to release it. I hope Apple has gotten this right, because I like the idea of AI built into our devices, but if it's not secure, it could be a real problem. That's just one of many problems with AI, and I think everybody is starting to get a little cooler on AI than they were at first. Not because it's just that it doesn't, we're still trying to figure out what it's actually good for.
I was just about to ask you, and I still will in 45 seconds, as a technology reporter, how skeptical of AI are you?
I am skeptical about, to this extent, I don't think we should be using AI for any really critical life or death systems at all. Stuff like, you know, whether or not people get let out on parole, stuff like whether or not people get government benefits, all kinds of stuff that government wants to use AI to help them make decisions with. I don't think we should be using AI for anything critical. Using it to help us write letters, things like that, sure, fine. I've done it. It's great. Playing around with it, it's okay. Mission-critical stuff, I don't think it's trustworthy enough. Not yet.
His name is Hiawatha Bray. Hiawatha Bray is technology columnist for the Boston Globe, who I've been honored to have had on this program to talk about why we black people ain't convinced yet that EVs are the answer to the prayer. And, of course, the new iPhone. Everybody's talking about that. Hiawatha, thanks for your reporting. Thanks for this conversation. Good to have you on, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for your time. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A program that would give legal status to illegal immigrants married to American citizens is being blocked by a federal judge. The Biden administration plan, started earlier this month, would have affected around 500,000 immigrants in the country without legal status. A U.S. Army soldier is pleading guilty to desertion after running into North Korea last year. Private Second Class Travis King, who is African-American, was facing legal troubles before he ran across the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. In California, Apple is expected to launch its iPhone 16 at its event on September 9th, tagged It's Glow Time. The event will take place at the Steve Jobs Theater in Apple Park and be streamed online. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Coco Gauff got off to a good start Monday in defending her U.S. Open tennis title. The 20-year-old African-American star defeated Varvara Gracheva of Russia in straight sets. Gauff, the number 3 seed at the U.S. Open, moves into Wednesday's second round. Gauff plays Tatiana Maria of Germany at 9 a.m. Gauff won her first Grand Slam title when she won last year's U.S. Open. The Dodgers and Angels are back in action tonight after a day off on Monday. The Dodgers are at home for the start of a 3-game series against Baltimore. The Angels are in Detroit to try to snap a 5-game losing streak. ESPN rounded up a few experts to rank the top 100 NFL players entering the 2024 season. Here's the top 5. Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson, Cleveland Browns defensive end Myles Garrett, and Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
SoCal businesses have relied upon the generator experts at Duthie Power Services for nearly 60 years for commercial and industrial generator maintenance, rentals, purchase, and installation. Secure backup power for your business at DuthiePower.com. DUTHIE Power.com.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hey there, it's Karen.
And I'm Ernest. We're the co-hosts of Food for Thought with Karen and Ernest here on KBLA Talk 1580. Make sure you check us out Saturdays at 8 p.m.
And our rebroadcast happens on Sundays at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about the art of dining. We'll be giving food tips, talking to sommeliers, chefs, concierges, all the food influencers. Everything food, everything dining. And sometimes with some of our friends just hanging out and talking food.
And when you listen to our show, we have a segment called Hot Dishes. Sometimes unpopular opinions, but we said what we said and we meant what we meant.
Also, we do food reviews with who's hot and who's not.
Yeah, you make sure you guys check out Food for Thought with Karen and Ernest here on KBLA. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Did you know your life insurance is an asset you can sell? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life. For almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. And at abacuspays.com, we've created a free policy value calculator so you can find out the worth of your policy in just seconds. There are no fees and no obligations. Get real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus. Learn more at abacuspays.com.
more honesty than you can handle, more empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Marissa Calderon, who's president and CEO of Prosperity Now. I'm pleased to have her on for a conversation here briefly about racial and ethnic justice as it relates to housing affordability, how we can reimagine community investment, and we will talk about the upcoming Prosperity Summit. Marissa, how are you today? Good to have you on.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I think you were in Chicago last week?
That's right. Yeah, that was something else to be able to be with so many people and to just have such an electric environment.
Yeah, I don't mean to color this question more than this. I thought you were there. We missed each other last week, so we wanted to invite you on the program this week. With regard to the issues that you track on, housing certainly is one of them, housing affordability. But whatever those issues are broadly, I'll let you unpack it as you will. But with regard to the issues that you track on, what did you hear, see, or at the convention last week that emboldened you or concerned you?
I would say that coupled with our own research is that, we've been around for 45 years. And what we've seen is that over the last 30 years, certainly that the black-white wealth gap and housing is a big part of that. It hasn't improved. In fact, since 2022, it's gotten worse. There's been an increase in that gap. And so, clearly all the good hard work that folks are doing is not changing the status quo. So that, I feel like, has motivated us with, to quote Dr. King, the fierce urgency of now.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what Prosperity Now does. You've been around for a long time. Tell me what you do, and then we'll jump from there.
Yeah, so we do public policy work, and we work on efforts around things that are helpful to housing that you might imagine around down payment assistance, zoning reform, refundable tax credits, supply-side homeownership tax credits. And we do more. We realize that public policy is not the only way to affect change. Otherwise, these gaps wouldn't exist. So we are really very focused on mobilization. That's one of the reasons for a summit like the one that we have, is to really gather together the ecosystem of those that are trying to impact change systemically and to do everything from networking, fuel your cup of enthusiasm and provide actual practical tools to affect systemic change.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to housing affordability, why, you mentioned this a moment ago, I want to just follow you, why, and I'm not naive in asking this at all, but I want to hear your view of this. Why is this such a stubborn issue? It's been this way for decades, as you mentioned. It is a stubborn issue, and we've obviously been through administrations where we've had Democrat presidents and Republican presidents, and to your own analysis, it is a stubborn issue on which we have not made nearly the progress that we need to make. Why is that, Marissa Calderon?
I think the uncomfortable truth is that the system is working as designed. It just wasn't designed for everyone to prosper.
Mm-hmm.
So until we get, kind of good and real with the fact that the systems and structures that are in place disenfranchise some of us, then we're not going to see effective change. And frankly, the status quo is hard to disrupt. It gets, the known areas of discomfort are in some ways, they end up feeling intractable. So it takes, a lot of effort from a lot of people aligned to be able to affect change.
So indict for me those systems and structures that you just referenced.
Well, for starters, the way that we evaluate credit is based on a population of people that are no longer reflective of what America looks like today. So there is a lot of evidence to back up the fact that, if we only look at the Black and Latino community, those communities use credit differently than 1970s, mostly white America did. And it doesn't mean that they are a bad credit risk. It means that they use credit differently than how that system was structured. And by sort of forcing an entire series of our burgeoning population into being evaluated by systems that were not meant for us, it means that we look riskier on paper when in fact we may not be.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more then. I asked you a moment ago about what you saw or heard at the Democratic Convention that empowered you or concerned you when it comes to the issues that you track. Let me be more incisive on this question. And the question is simply this. What is it that Democrats can do, ought do, to flip the script, as it were, on housing affordability?
I mean, I think for starters, this is the first time I have seen in a very, very long time, certainly in my memory, that housing has been an intentional, full force effort on the part of a campaign. It's just, it's for those of us that have been in housing for a long time, we've recognized that these are areas of issue, especially because for the Black community in particular, owning a home ends up being a large proportion of household wealth. And so these are not new areas of interest for those of us that work in these spaces, but it's the first time I've frankly heard that it is being centered as an important issue area for a candidate's campaign. And I mean, from the administration as well, housing and housing affordability is recognized as an issue with solutions that are being deployed to be able to address that. So I'm optimistic about the fact that, finally the time has come to be able to address housing affordability so that we can, fix some of what's broken.
When you say centered how? What are you seeing? What are you looking at?
Well, from the administration, first of all, they made an announcement a few weeks ago about a $100 million fund to be able to build more housing. From the Harris campaign, she has very clearly outlined that during the first administration that she would have if elected, that her administration would essentially commission and ensure the building of 3 million homes. And we have a deficit of at least 4.5 million homes based on who needs housing today in the country. So that sort of very explicit effort has not previously been defined by a candidate campaign in my memory.
Mm-hmm. How do we? I'm quoting now from the Obama speech last week, where there were two Obama speeches, of course. But how do we clear the way, clear away, I should say, some of the outdated laws and regulations that make it harder, first of all, just to build homes? I sit in L.A. right now. We're syndicated across the country. But that's one of the issues here. And L.A. is not the only city where part of the problem is that we don't have the capacity. We don't have we don't see an open lane, if I can put it that way, to avert all these regulations that make it harder for folk to, in fact, build homes, even if they can afford it.
Yeah, what you're really alluding to is the zoning reform changes that have happened and more that need to happen, because really our system of single family zoning is essentially an effort that took place to codify a separateness that was desired amongst people, so that there wasn't an intermingling of populations. And so, first of all, recognizing that is the case is the beginning part. In a place like California, where I also live, there's been a lot of effort on the part of the state and with some municipalities to be able to allow for an owner of a single family property to, for example, engage in redoing their garage so that grandma or a nephew or a niece can live there, or to add a unit to their space. And this is something that shouldn't be political. It shouldn't be partisan one way or another. If it's your space, you own it, you should be able to develop that in a way that meets your needs. And there are a number of other states that are taking note, and places like Arizona, Illinois, Minnesota have also undergone some zoning changes to allow for more personal flexibility in how you can make your space accommodate either your needs in terms of who you want to house with you, or your ability to earn an additional revenue stream off of having a little rental property on your property, and then essentially make some space for someone who needs a place to rent. Yeah. So more of that needs to happen to be able to really make the individuals have the ability to change their own destiny.
When we come forward, we'll talk more about how we push the issue of housing affordability higher on the American agenda in this space between now and November of this presidential campaign. We'll also talk about the Prosperity Summit taking place September the 4th through the 6th in Washington. So a bit more ground to cover with Marissa Calderon when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to
scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
I spray and scrub, but the soap scum in my bathtub is still there.
I spray and scrub, but the burnt sauce on my stovetop sticks around.
Sprays can leave grime behind, but Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser combines the scrubbing power of an eraser with the cleaning power of Dawn to melt away tough messes on contact.
Just wet, squeeze, and erase.
Stop spraying, start erasing, and clean with more magic than ever with Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. The smarter way to clean your floors. It's time to make the swap. Swiffer Power Mop.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder. Mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
Mommy, want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let Mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Marissa Calderon, who's president and CEO of Prosperity Now. Big Prosperity Summit coming up in a few days in Washington, September 4th through the 6th. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let me just ask you a point-blank question. Whether or not in this country housing ought to be a right.
I think housing is a human right. It should absolutely be a right in this country because nothing is improved if you don't have a safe, stable place to live. Literally everything is worse. So if we just start from that being a human right and build up from there, then our communities would be better.
Mm-hmm. Over the years, because you've been at this for a while, the organization been around longer than you've been there, of course. But what's your sense of how we have or have not had a robust conversation about that very notion that housing in this country ought to, in fact, be a human right? How do you assess the conversation again that we've had or not had around that very notion?
I mean, I think that the moment for that is sort of this reckoning that we're in now. It is the conversations kind of happened incompletely in the country at a very local level. You know, New York has been having this conversation for quite some time. It's frankly what inspired Finland to be able to approach having housing first as their social approach. And I think that country is a great experiment to view for ourselves, that they have essentially eradicated homelessness because they approached housing first. And communities are better for it there. Finland is not the United States. We have a lot more complexity in our demographics and population and a much more complicated history, with our own country's past. But what this requires is sort of collective effort and political will applied correctly to address.
Mm-hmm. I guess the question is whether or not you see in this moment, as you look out, the traction that we can gain or get to push this issue, as I said earlier, higher on the agenda.
I mean, I think that there needs to be sort of some additional force, because really homelessness and housing have oddly been handled separately. Mostly the people that deal with those two things professionally work in different spaces. So there really needs to be, to your point, a much more direct effort to bring those two communities together to address homelessness as a housing issue and not something that's separate. It's certainly shouldn't be addressed as something that is about how people arrived in that circumstance, because that is sort of the genesis of the problem is the notions of deservedness and why someone is in a circumstance versus addressing the needs that exist.
It's always amazing to me, Marissa, this audience has heard me say this many times over the years. It's always amazing to me how the dots connect on this show. There are two dots that are connecting right now that I didn't know 3 hours ago when I started this program that would connect the way they have in our dialogue. I want to connect those dots for the audience in case they missed it when we come forward in our remaining moments with Marissa Calderon, and we'll give her a chance to talk about the Prosperity Summit taking place in Washington on September 4th through the 6th. You're listening, and I'm glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward? Because he's not going back. And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada. Member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada. Member FDIC.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley, Marissa Calderon. Let me connect these dots right quick in case you've been listening all day today, and I hope that means you, and you. But we talked earlier in this hour, and as a matter of fact, about why the data suggests that black people in particular do not buy EVs. electric vehicles as we're trying to save our planet. They don't buy EVs for two reasons. One, they've got lower incomes. If you were listening, you heard this. And number two, the living patterns. So many of us live in apartments, and there aren't charging stations at these apartment units. And so for those two reasons, believe it or not, those two primary reasons, low income and living patterns, you see black people buying 8% of cars, but only 4.5% of EVs. So it's amazing the way in which this conversation about housing and where people live and whether or not housing is in fact a human right, and single parent families, single family dwellings, whether or not we end up moving toward an economy where more of us are buying these EVs and saving our planet, it depends again on living patterns and low income. In other words, this issue of housing affordability is at the epicenter of a conversation about climate justice, about climate equity, about climate resilience. Those things are not disconnected. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier that today is the publication day for the new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later. If you got this book 20 years ago, you'll want this new edition of the 10 covenants that matter most to black people, new essayists, new insights, new thinkers in this 20th anniversary edition that, again, publishes today. Why do I raise that? Because we were just talking about housing and homelessness or houselessness. 20 years ago, that issue was not on the docket of the 10 things that matter most to black people. It is 20 years later. Why? Because black people are now, black men in particular, are the face of the unhoused community in this country. What a difference a couple of decades makes. That's why this conversation about housing affordability is so vitally important, and that's why I've been pleased to have had Marissa Calderon on this program to talk about it as the president and CEO of Prosperity Now. I just wanted to connect those dots for those who may have missed that. But I know you're smart, and you probably picked up on it as I did. In the last 2 minutes I have, I'll yield them to you, Marissa, to tell me a bit about the Prosperity Summit taking place September the 4th through the 6th in the nation's capital. Marissa, can you hear me now? Is your mute button on, Marissa? Oh, Marissa Calderon. Anyway, we'll see if you can get her back. We got Marissa there? Okay. Marissa, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got 60 seconds. Tell me about the summit.
Great. Yeah, so we have 1,500 folks coming together to talk about all sorts of economic mobility issues, and key among them is housing, about how to address the racial wealth gap and really ensure that communities can help to drive some of the change that needs to happen.
It's the Prosperity Summit taking place in D.C. September 4th through the 6th. And again, what a delight it's been to have closed our program today in conversation about the issue of housing affordability for people of color and beyond, and how we got to get more serious about this. Our guest has been the president and CEO of Prosperity Now. Marissa Calderon, thanks for your work and your witness. Good to have you on. Have a great conference. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. Just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A program that would give legal status to illegal immigrants married to American citizens is being blocked by a federal judge. The Biden administration plan, started earlier this month, would have affected around 500,000 immigrants in the country without legal status. A U.S. Army soldier is pleading